right. Hello, this is Matt Harris with Verato, and today we're talking to Nicole Donnelly of DMG Digital. DMG Digital. I met Nicole for the first time, I believe, at Meet Magento, Florida, 2024. So over a year ago. Mm-hmm. And you got on stage, and I was like, preach, 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 baby. Oh my God. Someone who knows what we're doing and knows what we're talking about and has experienced the challenges firsthand. And anyway, so with no further ado, Nicole, tell us about yourself, what you do.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to be on your podcast, Matt. First of all, thanks for inviting me. I loved meeting you. That was such a fun event. Mm-hmm. Great event. It was lovely to meet you. And I think we were just like kindred spirits from the beginning, right? Like we we spoke the same SMB manufacturer distributor language. We've been in the trenches and know all the pain points. Yeah. So a little bit about me. I'm the founder of DMG Digital. We are a marketing consultancy. We work primarily with manufacturers and distributors to get them e-commerce ready. As you've experienced, a lot of these manufacturers and distributors don't really have a solid marketing infrastructure in place. Really struggle with product data and content assets and strategy in general. And so we really work with them to help build out marketing strategy, and change management is our MO, modus operandi. I feel like all the time, it's like, how can we bring the people together, align all of the silos and break them down so that everybody's moving in the right direction and that we can help them achieve some amazing, sales and revenue and e-commerce goals. So so that's a little bit about, and then I also host a podcast called Hello Moxie. Yeah. And we help women tell their stories and the women in history who've inspired them. And, working in a very male-dominated industry, manufacturing and e-commerce, we really want to help support women so they can, speak up and use their voices, because it's so important that there's diversity.
Oh, and man, do we need their voices in this industry for sure. Yeah, totally. That's awesome. Good work. You were talking about change management, so I want to kind of hone in on that a little bit. We have our kind of assessment process. We'll do a sales discovery assessment, and then that kind of becomes onboarding, and you kind of figure out who the players are. And we usually identify like allies and then gatekeepers. So there's like, you kind of have to know who's going to help you and who might resist your help. And so tell me about like, what does it look like from your perspective, and kind of what's the process that you go through?
Yeah, absolutely. So having gone through a number of digital transformation projects, not limited to B2B e-commerce. So, marketing automation, CRM, et cetera. I noticed a pattern. And without fail, there's 5 phases of change that people go through whenever they're navigating any sort of change project, digital transformation project. Those 5 phases are resistance, excitement, frustration, overwhelm, adoption, and then integration. So anytime you're introducing change, resistance is the first phase, and it's actually a normal part of the process. Anytime research has shown, anytime someone is faced with something new in their environment, their first reaction is, stop, I don't want to do this. So it's actually a step forward in the process. And then excitement, people, once you get through resistance, everyone's super excited. Expectations are sometimes really high, maybe too high. And then inevitably reality sets in once you start doing the work and you start doing the hard work of building and transitioning to, new digital processes and new workflows. And that's when the pain starts and everyone's like, this is harder than I thought. Our product data is shitty. It's a lot of work involved. And so there's there's training knowledge gaps. Then you move on to the adoption phase, which is all about repetition and making sure that you have feedback loops and everybody's practicing and doing. And once you work through that adoption phase, you reach the holy grail, the integration phase, where it's just part of how we do business. Yeah. And so those are the 5 phases. And so what I found is you can't skip them. Everyone without fail, you have to go through all those phases, but there are things that you can do to help lessen the pain, if you will, as people navigate through those phases. And so since we work primarily on the very front end of these projects with these companies. So we'll come in and really do a needs assessment up front. So when there's resistance, which is going to come, we really focus in on listening. How can we really get to know who the gatekeepers are and who the early adopters are, because there's always going to be multiple, and really take the time to listen to them and understand exactly what their fears are, what their concerns are, how they work, and ask them for their input and really validate whatever it is that they're experiencing, so you can start to build some trust and rapport with them and identify and help them be part of the process. So that when they're part of it and they're involved in it, they're going to be much more likely to buy in because they have a stake in what's going to happen. So that's the first phase. We always do this needs assessment up front, and it involves qualitative interviews with your internal customers and your external customers, and then quant data, where we're sending out a survey as well to the larger customer database. Take that data and then use it to craft a vision statement that leverages all of the input from all the teams. So everyone's happy. And then once you have the vision statement, then is the appropriate time. You've got your requirements, you know what you need to build, you know what your vision is for the project. Then you can bring in a technology partner at that phase to help you with the next step, which is, the discovery process and figuring out what platform you need and how are we going to take these workflows and digitize them and reduce some of those friction points. So that's kind of an overview of how we work, and we work side by side with SIs. So we're really there to kind of bridge the gap. So like what I've seen is that solutions integrators are so fantastic at building the technology, so fantastic. And I think the real sweet spot is when you have someone who can really build the technology and has the expertise to create. A lot of these B2B companies, especially SMBs, have very custom workflows. Marry that with a really solid change management strategy is really when you can help them get the adoption that will really make the solution successful.
Yeah, that totally rings true with me. And also it helps them to feel like now they're stakeholders in this process. They have a little bit more visibility and awareness of what's going on. So there's been like a change management, like an expectation management component to this. Like, what do I expect? Because a lot of them come in with a lot of false expectations, and sometimes, like you said, they're too high. They think this is going to be easy or whatever. And I think the SIs, like you said, they're sometimes really good at solutions.
Yes.
But they're not good at assessing problems necessarily.
Yeah.
They're applying solutions sometimes too early, instead of going through the listening phase where they're doing a comprehensive assessment of what the problems are. And then looking at, is this even the right solution now that I've heard all the problems? Yeah.
Exactly. And having the emotional intelligence to really understand exactly what the pain
and be
is.
willing to listen. Mm-hmm. I heard someone use this metaphor, and I thought it was hilarious. It's like, you've been in the same house for 50 years and your garage is falling over, your barn's falling over, and you're going to build a brand new barn. Mm-hmm. You're not going to put everything back exactly where it was. You've been pushing stuff in the back of this garage forever.
Yep.
And so you're not going to just pull it all out and just push it into this new clean thing that you just built, right? You're going to, so you have to start digging through the garage and be like, do we even want this? Do we even need this? You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Yeah. It's totally an evolution, and you want it to be. You don't want to put it back the same way. Why are you doing it if you're going to just do it the same way? But there's such I've seen there's such knowledge gaps, especially for these SMB companies. I mean, I'll tell you, I was on a call with a client, manufacturing client, till my dying day. I'll never forget this. I use the acronym B2B all the time. And I was in this meeting and I was like, B2B, B2B. And literally their operations logistics manager stopped me and said, can you tell me what B2B is?
Yes.
I don't know what that is. And I think sometimes, especially technology partners, when you know something so well, you just know it. You don't think that someone else doesn't understand it, doesn't know the acronym. Yeah. But a lot of these folks, they just don't. They need some basic hand-holding understanding of, these acronyms, what e-commerce means, how it works, because they don't know. And sometimes we assume that they do because we know it, Yeah. And so it's how can we bridge that gap so that they have the understanding? Because I've been in calls too where the client will be sitting on the call, the SI will be explaining things to them and they just nod their head, say very little. They're just like, okay, and then get off the call and the SI leaves the call and I'm, the client with the client and they say, I have no idea what they just said. I'm like, why didn't you say something?
Yeah.
Don't just nod your head.
Yeah.
But it's an ego thing, I think.
Well,
sometimes.
but think about it. It's kind of like, you don't want to be called out. You don't want someone to, you don't want to be recognized as someone that doesn't know something. So you're just going to stay quiet, right? That's like, that's a normal kind of human response. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is like, we know God, there's so many things to talk about, but one of the things I've been saying, like my mantra is don't go in the initial engagement with one of these companies and pull the fire alarm. You know what I mean? And some of these agencies do that. Like, well, you got to change all this. And you're like, no, listen, just shut up and listen.
Yes.
And you're going to learn something if you can quiet yourself and listen. And a lot of them, and this is a whole other thing we could talk about, is these are family run businesses.
Yes.
So it's also, you got to figure out the dynamics of the family.
Oh yeah.
All the time. So you don't want to come in there and be like, I know something that you don't know. They're going to be like, get out of here. We don't want to even talk to you.
Out. Yeah.
So sure. I think if you want to help them, you have to start by listening, and you have to be very respectful. Anyway, I'm preaching, but like a couple things we wanted to talk about is how B2B and B2C are different. And you hilariously said they don't even know they're in B2B, right? Or what that means.
Yeah.
And then and they're small and they're family business and they're generational family businesses. So tell me a little bit about like how B2B and B2C is different from your perspective and then working with these meaning businesses.
So I'll tell you, my first experience with B2B e-commerce was, it's been like 6 or 7 years ago now. I was a marketing director for a manufacturing company and I was like, let's do e-commerce. The owner actually was like, I want to start. That's literally the owner said, I want to start selling online. That's what he said. So I'm the marketing director and I'm like, I want to figure this out. I go in and I'm like, okay, guys, this is not, how hard can this be? We just set up a shopping cart. I'm just going to put some SKUs up there. The money's going to start rolling in. And because as a consumer, I was so used to my B2C experience and that's what I brought to this project. And I learned very quickly that just was not going to work. With B2B companies, you're dealing with custom price books, sometimes for every customer, for every SKU.
Yep.
And negotiated pricing. You've got long sales cycles. So if you think about B2C, a lot of that is impulse buys, right? I'm on Instagram. Oh my gosh, the other day, I just saw this like silk head wrap for curly hair. And I'm like, I need this silk head wrap for curly hair so I can sleep and I don't have to do my hair the next day. Boom, like within 10 seconds, I buy the silk hair wrap, right? That is not the case in B2B. These buyers are not buying for fun. They're buying because they have to. It's their job. They want to get it done as quickly as possible, and a lot of times there's multiple buyers involved, right? You've got like a buying committee and you're buying in bulk. So you have to worry about, it's not something that's going to be shipped UPS in a box. You have to worry about weights and DIMs, and pallets now and freight and less than, LTL shipping.
LTL ship freight. Yeah, totally.
All of that, which adds a lot of complexity. And how do you calculate the shipping rates for those products? And how do you palletize them depending on the quantities and the items and all of that is it's a lot of complexity. And then when you think about pricing, or we've talked about pricing, but like, payment methods too. People aren't just going to pay by credit card. They want to pay on terms. Let's be honest. Everyone wants to pay on terms. You've got, quoting, invoicing, ACH, like there's so many different payment options that you need to have available. So you've got to be very flexible to meet them where they are, in that respect. And so those are just like some of the core challenges that B2B has that B2C simply doesn't have. Bulk ordering is one of them as well.
Yeah,
and then you have the challenge of channel conflict, which is huge, where you have sales teams talking about resistance who are very, very threatened by e-commerce. You have a legacy way of selling where it's traditionally a very consultative sales process. And rightly so. A lot of these products are custom manufactured, right? They're not just like off the shelf SKUs. And it requires someone and it has to fit, if it doesn't fit, the plant shuts down. It's not like, oh my gosh, my silk hair wrap came and I don't like it anymore. Boo hoo. Well, if this, filter doesn't fit, the whole plant shuts down. So the stakes are really high.
Yeah.
And with that, there's a lot of, people want to talk to a person. They're not necessarily just going to buy it straight off the website all the time if it's their first time and if it's a custom manufactured product. So those are some of the challenges I think that you have to think about in the B2B land is how can you create an e-commerce experience that meets the customer where they are. And, I honestly think that e-commerce it needs to change for B2B. Like I think these B2B companies think of e-commerce and they're thinking about it like I did with my B2C brain. Okay, it's a checkout and I add to my cart and I check out. But really in B2B, it's such a different kind of experience. It's so operational. It's more about like, how can we digitize your entire operations process to create some efficiencies and reduce friction for the buyers, right? So like, instead of B2B e-commerce, like what if we just called it your digital sales admin, right?
Yeah.
Like for sales reps, this is a way for you to help you sell more and reduce the amount of time you're spending selling. Like for example, if you were to able to tier your customers and identify, okay, these are the low hanging fruit, repeat customers who are ordering the same items, sub $1,000 over and over again. How can we get them buying online?
Yeah.
I still get my commission.
Right.
And then I can focus on these high value customers, high dollar customers so those are just some things I think that are some of the core. What do you think, Matt? What are you?
Yeah. I mean, you're hitting the nail on the head for me. I think the thing that surprised, I've been doing this for a while. So, but when I first got into it, the thing that surprised me is that there's really a lack of marketing in some of these companies. They don't really have like a marketing department. They don't have a marketing brain. It's essentially like sales and relationships. So sometimes you're like, okay, how are we going to find new customers? And they'll be like, well, we don't need new customers. We have lots of customers. We just need to make it easier for them. So the metrics are even different. Like how you're measuring your success is different. Your KPIs are different. Like, what's our conversion rate or how many new leads we're getting in? And they're like, no. We want these guys ordering more often with fewer manual entries and fewer phone calls. Mm-hmm. So that, and basically the buyers don't want to keep calling in and looking at our print catalog. They just want to be able to. So, and that was a lot of the frictions that we've seen is like these older businesses that have had negotiated pricing, price books and commissions on top of sales flow. They're like, well, we can't do it. It won't work. It won't work with our model. And I think that attitude is declining. There's still some older businesses that think that way. But I guess my response to that is that you can, but you need to kind of go slowly. You don't necessarily want to do it really fast.
Yes.
Right. Because, we don't really know how much work it's going to take necessarily initially. But anyway, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. The one other thing I would say, if you could expound, since you're in the marketing side of things, that's a different world too on the B2B side. Like marketing sometimes almost doesn't exist, and sales is so important.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And there has to be kind of like a marketing foundation in place before you're even ready to like digitize your process, to move to digital transformation. Like going into these companies where they literally have no content assets at all, right?
Yep.
Like there's no video content. The product images are terrible, or they're non-existent, or that you only have them for some product categories, not all. And you don't have good descriptions. There instruction manuals, there's spec sheets, and all of that is just trash, to be honest. And you have to go in.
It's
outdated, and you've got to go in there, and now you've got to start interviewing the engineers to actually start to develop the content data that you need to be able to bring this forward online, get it out of their heads, right? Because a lot of times it's all that tribal knowledge that hasn't been, it hasn't been taken out of their brain and put in a format that's easy for people to see and available at scale, which is what e-commerce does. It allows, and marketing, right? It's all about getting that information and publishing it out at scale so people can see it and access it. And so I think that's what I've seen has to be like ground zero. Like you have to go in and assess, okay, what am I looking at here from like a content perspective? What do they even have created? What information do they have from their suppliers, right? And what needs to be created so that we can even have something solid to put up on an e-commerce store, because otherwise your conversion rates are, going to be terrible. And so depending on how many SKUs you have and products, I mean, that can be quite an extensive process. So you've got, like you mentioned before, you've got to crawl, walk, run, you've got to batch it. You may not be able to put all of your SKUs up at once, but maybe focus on like, what are the product categories that are going to really drive the needle for you first, and really focus on having, solid data and identifying, okay, what product attributes are most important that we have, and let's focus on those, and then we can kind of, move the ball forward. But if you try to eat the whole elephant all at once, it's going to be so overwhelming. You're never going to make it through that phase 3 of change. So you have to bucket it. You have to.
I mean, we get back to the ERP data, which is like 65% of the ERP transformations fail. And it's because they sold them the software before they did an assessment, right? It's like, well, you need NetSuite, right? Yeah, well, we'd like to have it. Okay, well, what's it going to cost? Well, not to throw NetSuite under the bus, like we love NetSuite, but it's like this happens across the board on all these platforms. Yeah. And the sales teams are being incentivized to just sell the software, right? Get the logo, get the commission, get the contract, 3 years, done. Now what? Well, we have to implement it. Well, we haven't even really talked about like that.
Yes.
Right?
So much.
Yes. Yeah. And you're like, no, that's where you start. You start there. You don't, you start with an assessment of what you need and what you're trying to do. Don't even commit to a solution yet.
Yeah. And the challenge is that, like, bless their hearts, these companies don't have a lot of resources, these SMBs in particular. They don't have a lot of resources to do the assessments, right? You mentioned a lot of them don't have manufacturing departments. And so that's something you have to really assess really early on.
You mean marketing departments?
Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to assess that early on to be like, what am I like, if you're a SaaS partner, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like the SaaS partners need to be partnering with consultants or people internally earlier in the process, so that they're not just selling them a product, but they're consulting with them at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I've been on that end of things where they're just like, that sales rep is like, okay, buy by the end of the month and you get this special discount. And if you don't get it, like you're toast. It's like, really? Why are we playing this game?
And then the next month they're like, hey, guess what? We have another deal. We just found out about this new deal. Oh, really? That looks a lot like the deal you had last month. This is the same deal.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I know. Everyone is doing their thing. They have to sell their, everyone's trying to have a profitable business. I don't necessarily I don't judge these companies for doing what they need to do to stay in business. And a lot of them have technologies that's great. It's awesome. And the sales process is the sales process, and we all do it. So, but I think it's what my point is, people need Nicole, right? They need people like you before they get into these big investments, right? Yeah. Like it's going to save the planning phase and the onboarding phase is just going to save you so many headaches and potentially so much money.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you have someone who has some experience, who's been on the front lines, that can help guide you through that process. Honestly, I wish I had that person when I was the marketing director 6 years ago.
That's right.
I needed someone to show me the way and be like, and I'm telling you, I would have made way less mistakes and we would have wasted a ton less money if I had someone then to help guide me through the process. And you need someone agnostic who's not like attached to, a SaaS product or even an SI. Like it's almost like you need an ombudsman, right? Like someone who can be there to help be your Yoda, if you will, through the process.
Yeah, someone that's got a little gray in the beard or, been around the block.
I got a lot of gray.
I wasn't saying that, but I'm just saying that we've hit some landmines before, like we know where they are, some of them, so.
And letting them know realistically that you're going to hit some landmines that we're not expecting. And that's a part of it.
That's right. That's part of the
I think you have to level set that with them early and say, this is going to be painful. it's not going to be easy. You know, there's going to be bumps in the road. It's like when you're on a plane and there's turbulence. I hate it. But when the pilot comes on and tells me, hey, we're going to have turbulence, it's going to be like this for the next 15 minutes. It's like instantly I have this relief. I'm like, oh, okay. I know what to expect.
Yeah.
But if they don't say anything and it's just bumpy, I'm like, what's going on? You know, you need someone to level set with you and be like, hey, we're going to go for a ride here. And it's a ride, but it's going to be worth it once we get to the other side.
And sometimes that honest truth, like the tough love kind of approach, you can lose some deals if you're in the sales process, but sometimes they come back. I've noticed that. They're like, oh, you were telling me the truth. And I'm like, yeah, I was telling you the truth. It's not going to be easy, but you kind of, and the idea of partnership too is very scary for these businesses. Like, oh, I need to, like, you're going to be working with me for a long time, you know, like,
you're manufacturing a product, you buy it once and there you go.
Yeah. All right. So we promise not to go and talk forever, but Nicole, I could have you on my podcast a million times. I'm sure there's stuff that we didn't even cover. So I hope to have you on again soon.
It's a pleasure, my friend. I always love talking to you.
So again,
I learned so much every time I talk to you, Matt.
Vice versa, man. Right back at you. Yeah, no, this is great. So it's Nicole Donnelly. It's DMG Digital. I'll let you.
Yeah, DMG Digital. You can find me on LinkedIn. Nicole Donnelly on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. So
great public speaker, by the way. If you're going to an event, Nicole's going to there. Listen to what she has to say. It's inspiring. She speaks the truth.
I wouldn't have it any other way, my friend.
Yes. All right. We'll leave it at that. So Nicole, thank you so much. Again, this is Varato, Varato. You can find us where you find podcasts. Check out our YouTube channel. Check out our stuff on LinkedIn. Follow Curiously. I'm still working on that one. I'm shopping that one around. Tagline. All right, Nicole. Thank you very much.
And thanks, Matt. This has been such a joy. Thanks for the work you're doing to help small businesses.
All right. You're welcome. Thank you.